the only real decision here for coming up with ideas for anyone, which is why this presentation is for everyone, how to come up with an idea first and foremost is taking the step to be deliberate with the power that you hold. Loaf. We don't ask questions about loaf. I did one time, and I regretted it. Are you a furry? You're talking about maws and paws? And they're like, no, my maw and paw. I'm like, oh, if you take in egg, then you're trying to replicate egg. Sort of experimentation in the present day from people doing things in their head is things like video games. This level screen is one of like the basic designs of showing how it starts off with a seedling, then it grows into a big tree. That's a way that you can think of those problems where you actually put all these ideas into action from the presentation. If you know the broad strokes of it, you can definitely just do the strokes. Welcome everyone. Today I have pause. And unlike last presentation, where I was a mere bobblehead, I can actually use VR chat, which works by me overlaying myself onto this presentation to more directly interact with you. It's a cool idea, right? Our future has like some grand aspects about it that our parents couldn't even imagine. I mean, VR is this new magical medium. And like, I don't even think that my parents would imagine me as being a yin on the screen. Which that begs the question, the ultimate question. Where do your ideas come from? Yes, you, specifically in chat. I can specifically see you right now. Can you tell me the origin of your ideas? Is it just big ideas that catch your mind's eye? Have you ever tried imagining why most of your thoughts throughout the day actually appear in your head in the first place? How they take up space? How they can be recalled deliberately or by surprise, with sometimes it not being a great surprise, but you know, it happens. This is the question of where does an idea start from that I want to answer. I guess we should start somewhere, and we'll start with who I am, the yin on the screen. Unlike my other presentation about the boycott, I get paid to do this stuff, which means that I am technically a professional, because that's what a professional means. You get paid to do things. And that makes sense. Ideas are the currency of artwork. They are the main thing that is communicated within these pieces. And for me, that's generally very big fluffy things, because I like big fluffy things. But there are a lot of people that do different things in this world with their ideas. Rumble Drake is a very kind rumble tumble of a person who is an all-powerful mod in every chat and wants to take over the world. And that's just his thing. There's Saphiro, a wonderful cat artist. You merely only need to do to summon for them to give you cute things and cute draws. And you have people like Vince Wolf, also known as #Guins, who projections will hit your ears and will give you a fun stream. And then I am like them. I produce the content you see before you. I am what is called a creator, an idea creator, but I have a secret, chat. And no, it's not me being a croc. One day, not now, one day. But I need you to keep a secret for me. It's very important that you keep a secret for me, chat. And you can't tell anyone else. It has to be a secret. And it isn't simple, but that's the whole point of this presentation, is that you know the secret. And I think that secret is, I think common thoughts about how creatives come up with ideas versus those who think that they're uncreative is a bullshit theory, a lie, a toxic mindset that has infected the world throughout history. And that makes sense, right? Like, there's a lot of thoughts about all of this. Now, like, I can't be the end-all be-all of all ideas, or like how ideas are processed. Other people have different views of how creation works. I have similar ones to other people, and there are other people who are vehemently opposed to what I think is true. The people that are opposed to me normally have an idea that there's like a few architects, that there are a few architects that like just know how to create things, that are gifted individuals that can just do things. There are the few top people who can make all the ideas, and then there are the sheeple workers who just follow blueprints and they don't actually create things. And I think that's stupid. And I also think that like even artists have those sorts of ideas, which is, again, very toxic. That's my viewpoint. And it's a viewpoint that says that it's not merely that everyone could do what I do or any creative thing that anyone else does. I know for a fact everyone here does the exact same process to come up with an idea as any creative person does. The only difference in that process is that for most people, that process isn't thought about and is usually hidden away. Creative people who produce things are normally just confident in their failures to put it out there. And that's like really it. You know, I want to explain how all of this works. I want to be able to talk about how the idea of ideas come about, because that toxic mindset is, you know, pretty bad. I don't think it's helpful for anyone, but it's also a common thing. I think if a silly yin like me can come up with all these pictures, then it's not that special, which is great. That's cool. It means everyone can participate in the ability to breathe life into our surroundings, to put forth our will for all the others to understand. And in relation to the furry fandom, that can just mean creating furry artwork. Although we all know what I'm saying is not easy. Not everyone can just like poof. Or even if they can think of ideas, they may not be able to like render them. Like even I only have so much rendering capability, because that's just how all of this works. But I think there can be a more fruitful discussion about how we even get to the thoughts to start implementing them first. Even for me, again, the rendering is a problem, but I have other limits too, such as monetary limits. Whoa, one of those limits, monetary, you can help me with. Whoa, I can't get the brain juices flowing if I literally don't have juice, specifically boba, and also food. Because, you know, I need food to keep this very perfect yin body condition in perfect yin senses. I put my artwork into a Gumroad pack recently, which you can find at that link if you would like to ever support my artwork and also get some artwork in return. If you like my ideas and this stuff, I hope that you support it. I will be using some of the pictures from that pack in here. I'll also be using like other pictures I normally just have made and are publicly on my other sites. But yeah, if you see something that's like, I don't think I've seen that online, there's a high chance that it's either deep in a file that'll never be recovered, or it's in this pack. There's also bits and subbies. All the bits and subbies. They're very nice. You can see because the number is 69. That also helps me out a lot too. There's also the Prime subby. The Prime subby is free if you have Amazon Prime, and you should use it because it puts me as a Prime yin with prime conditions of yin, but also Amazon just keeps the money if you don't use it every month. So using it makes them waste their money, and that's a good thing. Let's start actually discussing what an idea is. We'll explain all the idea stuff so that you can put it onto paper. We need to talk about definitions to actually figure out where we should start with what an idea is. So an idea, from the Oxford Online Dictionary, which you can find just by Googling, that's what Google uses apparently for their stuff. Their definition is a thought or a suggestion as to possible course of action, which that's an okay thought, but it lacks what like an idea is. My definition that I would like to use today is the combination of knowledge and experiences that form a possible solution for our world, or for your world. I think this is much better for thinking of ideas because it allows for a lot more flexibility and also explains a little bit about where the ideas come from. For any definition that's stricken out, we're not going to use that. It's still kind of in the background, but like ignore it. It's the colorful, bright one that we're going to use. We do need to think about each of these elements though, because we have added new aspects to this definition. World was one of those things that we need to discuss. The definition that is used a lot of the time is the Earth together with all of its countries, peoples, and natural resources, which is like, it's very inclusive, but it doesn't describe most people's actual experiences or knowledge. If you don't know a part of the world, like say Poland, you've never been to Poland, you haven't heard of Poland, it got deleted once, so like, it's kind of just over there. It doesn't even exist to you, so like, it is a part of the world, but it's not a part of your world. It's not a place of where you can get ideas from. So the world is going to be the physical and mental spaces in the form that one perceives around them, which is a lot easier to talk about than because you're discussing your specific world rather than just like the definition of Earth. And that affects us in a lot of different ways. It also affects our mind, because our mind is here. And in the definition from the Oxford Language Dictionary, the elements of a person that enables them to be aware of the world and their experiences, to think and to feel, a faculty of consciousness and thought. And I actually really like this term. I think this works really well. I am going to add one caveat to it because it's very important. The mind is physical and not separate from ourselves. There's no soul, there's no outer being, etc. The mind is a series of physical reactions on a scale that is meaningless to us until the final result is shown in like a macro sense. So like me moving my arm, technically there's a lot of little processes that happen way beforehand, but all I can see is arm waggle, paw waggle. These buildup of macro interactions happen when we see our present day actions, our thoughts, and our memories, and we need this feedback in order for us to operate in a world, for us to find out what ideas are for. This isn't in the definition that I said earlier, but this is very important, which is solutions. The definition that they use is meanings of solving a problem or dealing with a difficult situation, which I think is weird as a way to say solution. You know what 2 + 2 equals. It equals 4. That's not much of a problem. It may be for like a little baby kid, little babby, little small lad. But for you, it's not really that much of an issue anymore. You can easily just think of what the solution is for that. So difficulty doesn't seem like it's helpful. So my definition is a method of solving a conflict or a disturbance. The solution doesn't actually have to work, because a lot of solutions don't actually work, or they work to a certain degree. And we need that flexibility for us to understand our own ideas, because we need to be flexible with our ideas. And we also need it to understand that like ideas come from there being a problem and then figuring out what to do with that problem. Like if you don't know Poland exists, like there's nothing to really do with it. If you don't have anything in the way, you usually don't notice it's a problem, even though somebody else who knows that there's a conflict there will try to solve it and right in front of you. That's how like a lot of scientists work, or how like designs work for doors, and bad doors that make you push them even though they're pull. Like there's a whole set of things to be considered when you're talking about a solution. This also narrows down what we actually need to think about for ideas, because now we have a goal in mind of what actually needs to be thought about. And through that, we also need a framework for those ideas and for those solutions to come about, you know. The definition for this is a basic structure underlying a system, concept, or text, which this is a good definition in general, but for idea creation, it's bad. It doesn't tell us what a structure is. So my definition is a set of logical ideas you entertain or believe are the basis for other thoughts or actions. So like logical in this sense just means like it's a series of events that you can figure out. Like if you're doing arithmetic, you know how to add all the little numbies together to get 4 from 2 + 2. You can also do that with illogical things, like the flat earth. People know how to get to there. It's not a logical, like, fact or an idea, but the way that you get to that idea can be very logical for somebody to figure it out. We need that framework in order to figure out how we are going to frame our ideas, so that we can figure out what the list is to creating new ideas and how to come up with new ideas. With this fundamental understanding, we can proceed to actual ideas and where they actually come from. So, chat. Very important, chat. I need you to do something, because it's very important. I need you to imagine a cat. Like, actually imagine one right now. It's very important. So, you're going to imagine a cat. What do you see? Is it a highly detailed cat you know? Is it a cartoon? Is it a cartoon that you've seen from the past? What sort of thing is in your mind? And why? Why is it like that? For me, when somebody says cat, I think of multiple things, but the one that I think of the most at points is the most powerful one, and that one is of my cat. I'm not showing them on screen. I don't want that to be the thing, but for me, the representation of my cat is very meaningful to me. When people bring that up, I think of them. It's a creation I've made up in my head as a solution to make me feel better. The cat that I see is a result of static memories or real events that happened in my life. They no longer exist, but the idea of them allows me to, like, think of them. even though, like, they're not here. Showing a picture doesn't describe them. It can't, because they require more context. They were my cat. No one else can imagine that. Such a construction can have me crying on the floor. For other people, it's the same thing, but everyone has different degrees to what that idea is. And that's good. It means that we all have different ways of thinking of any idea that comes up, even for something like a cat. Whatever is behind this poof cloud of a cat is yours. It is only for you. The creative versus non-creative thing is a lie. The whole architect makes an idea, or there are some people who can think of an idea and some people who can't, isn't real. Everyone is creative all the time. What you see, what you feel, what you know comes from you remixing all of your knowledge and experiences in the world, and it pops up constantly, even when you say something. Even if it's just a feeling or just text in your head, it is still something that you have made from what you have lived throughout your life. And it's framed in a way for you to be able to actually express and understand the world around you. It is your voice. Ideas are not mere things one creates, mere things to regurgitate and consume in passing. Creativity is not a thing that you are or are not. The world may treat ideas as disposable actions that are only meaningful when they're productive or seen by others to use, but the cat that you imagined, despite everything, it's you. The recall is you. So, if we take a step back from knowing that, like, the ideas that you come up with are not just things that you create, but are you, understanding that requires understanding what that actually means in the context of making more things, or making more of yourself. There's an easy framework to use for just like figuring out how to categorize ideas, which is something that I use a lot for my stuff. It's a basis for like a lot of media, which is these three things. What an idea is, not if it's inherently or morally these things, just how it works for the present time. There can be good things, such as the toilet. The toilet is something that everyone shits on all the time. Like literally just shits on all the time. So we forget about how of an amazing engineering feat the toilet is. It is something that takes away our nasty doo-doo in pee-pee and puts it somewhere far away, which back in the day, it didn't do that. And a lot of people got cholera and a lot of other diseases because that stuff is pretty bad. And it also can make this place smell up. Like the water inside the bowl actually has a function. It's not just there to like look cool when you like are done as like a fanfare. It traps gases behind the water so that you're not smelling the poo-poo. So like the toilet is really amazing and really great. It's an idea that has helped many people and needs to help more because not everyone has a toilet, so we need to do that. There's also okay ideas like the fidget spinner. It is a silly toy that was a fad. It may still be around, but a lot less people use them. It spins, it goes whoosh. It's neat. It's not inherently good or bad. It can be fun. It can just be there. It is a thing. That is fine. Then there are bad things like eugenics. Eugenics is basically the study of how to make society better through controlling how people reproduce. Or dogs. Dogs had a eugenics too. That's why there's so many of them. This idea is something that a lot of people have. In fact, it has made life harder for a lot of humans, such as interracial interactions between people. There's this chart made in 2021. This chart shows approval of marriages between black and white people between the years of 1936 and 1996. Around 1996, it got to 94%, which is really cool. Because this yin was born in 1994 as a tiger raccoon. This made my life a lot better when bad ideas like eugenics got left behind and people figured out that we could work together and actually have a nice time, and that we could instead have like cool 90s cups and CD players and the Game Boy. It came out in 1989, but it's still the 90s thing because I played it as a kid. So yeah, it's really cool. But chat, if you notice, this chart has a big secret. Can you tell what the secret is? I'll let you guess. I'll give you a minute. There is a secret. It is a big one. It is here. And that secret will be revealed Ah, you're onto something. You're very onto something, Raz. You are correct. The wording has been changed. It actually is a chart that was made in 2021 for the years 1958 through 2021, which means that this chart is 25 years off, or the last chart was 25 years off. This was the real one. I may have lied to you, chat. I'm sorry that I lied. But I want to bring this up as a bad idea example because I was born in 1994 to a minority of people approving of mixed marriages, which means that a lot of racist things that you could think of happened. It could mean teachers being absolutely shit garbage people. It means having a hard time filling out paperwork for things as simple as like needing to pick a race because you had to pick one race, you couldn't do multiple because, you know, mixing the races together is bad, as we all know. My existence around even my parents could be trouble. If I was with my tiger mom, people could look at them and go like, oh, you betrayed all tigers. How dare you? My mere existence was a problem because of this. It wasn't until that I was 11, a preteen, when society decided, yeah, being mixed is okay. It's not even all of society. If you notice, it's around 75%, which means that if the approval rating was cents, you couldn't buy anything from the Dollar Tree because you only have 3/4 and a penny. And that's not even speaking of the fake chart, like being only 25 years off, which means anyone around my age, because I'm 27 now, could have two parents. Two parents. One could approve of mixed marriages, and one could have not approved of it. You could have a household where two people didn't agree. It was a 50-50 chance in 1990, or it was less than a 50-50 chance in 1994, which is really not great, right? Only discussing like parents too, for like my age. What about grandparents? What about great-grandparents? How is the likely chance that your parents were in the 4%? There's a 96% chance they were not. And it's not 100% this current year either, which means that there are kids who still experience the things that I experienced. It may be less, luckily, but it's still there. It hasn't left. The echoes of the past of bad ideas are still here. This chart didn't happen randomly. That's not how any idea works. Ideas are granular and can be used in any way because that's how it, like all ideas work. You can have a list that's like this instead. Eugenics being good, toilets being okay, and fidget spinners being bad. Toilets have their problems, like they cost a lot in repairs because people sometimes flush down like wet wipes down them, and it costs a lot of money to take out the wet wipes from the sewer system because you're not supposed to flush things down like that. But people do anyway because stores say it's flushable, which is technically true. It's just not practically true. Fidget spinners are actually kind of bad. They take up resources that helps with climate change that ruins our planet, and also the creator of the fidget spinner doesn't even get the rewards from it. If you look up the story of how the fidget spinner was made, it's really sad because it was made with a purpose and a meaning that's actually like good, and due to capitalism, it turned bad. And like, that's really shitty that the fad that could have made somebody's life better didn't. For eugenics, this chart does not just show approvals, it also shows the decline of our society. It shows us that there is a white displacement, as people these days say. People are actively working to improve this chart again, so that white supremacy can be seen as good and useful, quite like the olden days, which are not that old. Your grandparents are still alive. They were the olden days. And your grandparents really aren't that old, because you also probably have great-grandparents too. It's really not that far away ago. This can work. People can absolutely make racism a huge thing again, which a lot of people are. Racism isn't just a random thing. It was a thing that helped the developing world get an amazing footing compared to everyone else. There are developed nations and not developed nations, and if you look at which ones are developed and which ones aren't, there's a clear pattern there that shows why racism worked, why it was good. why it helped. You got items, you got resources at the cost of human lives, if you thought of them as human and not just as subhuman. That framework allowed people to have countries like America be so great and prosperous. It's by using blood from other people, which we still incur today. We still do the same thing. We just do it less or in a different way, which means that this chart, again, it's not old. It is still here. A huge chunk of my life has been not 100%. And again, when I was born, it was in the minority. And that affects my life, which, then brings up the question of like, why do we have to talk about this? How does that come up with ideas? Like, I just want to create fluffy, cute things. Fluffy animals are cute. Give me the fluffy, ooh-woo, fluffy boys, ooh-whoa. Why even come up with ideas? I already know about the fluffy boys. I already know I can make the fluffy boy. I already have the fluffy boy ideas. I don't need to create. I am. The ideas were inside me all along, like an anime. But ideas shape the world. We all act out those ideas, because ideas will happen to you whether you like it or not. No one is good, okay, or bad at making ideas. We all participate in making ideas. We are all good, okay, and bad at different points for those ideas. The idea that anyone isn't creative is a lie, because it's the idea that you don't change, that you are nothing, that you're always neutral. And in order for that to make sense, you basically have everyone have to be a stump, a tree, nothing. They can't be anything. But we are things. Clearly, I'm a yin. Hello. And me saying things is inherently an idea that I'm spreading. It's an idea that I've come up with through the means of my life and through seeing things and from what other people do. And that's what makes us human. Ideas are what make everyone human, or furries. I'm a yin. I'm not human. I'm yin. I have beans. When an artist like me creates artwork, we're just purposely processing other ideas within ourselves. Those ideas are one part of a huge network of generations of ideas that echo through time. And we just purposely are trying to decide which ones we want to use for a certain goal, like a piece of artwork. The only real decision here for coming up with ideas for anyone, which is why this presentation is for everyone, not just for people who want to come up with ideas, is that we are all going to face ideas that make us up, and how we're going to use said ideas in our world is important. How to come up with an idea, first and foremost, is taking the step to be deliberate with the power that you hold. We need more people to think of that, because like furries are a great idea. They help with a lot of things. They make life a lot of fun. And like, I would have not been the same person I am without them. I love furries. I love the idea of toilets because I don't want to shit in an outhouse. I do not like shitting in an outhouse. Have you been to concerts where they have the weird outhouse thing? It is not fun. And like, I like you. I think you're cool, and I want to see more people do things. I want people to be vocal and to actually have ideas that I can see, because that's what makes my Twitter feed fun, or TikTok feed, or YouTube, or going outside and seeing a mural, or seeing a cool car, and stuff like that. I want people to have ideas, and to, like, think about them, because we get cool things from that. But we also have to remember that we get really bad things from this, which is why this presentation, again, exists. I want to discuss that, and I want everyone to be able to have the ability to think of all these ideas. And yeah, it's fine. Misconceptions and conceptions. Whoa, time to talk about more things. There's three main things that people talk about as a way to discuss ideas that I think are not helpful. The idea of creatives versus non-creatives, the idea of like original ideas, and the ideas that are just ideas are some main components of modern day discussions that are a bit weird. So we'll start off with the first one, because that's a pretty big divide of saying like creatives versus non-creatives as a thing. Well, what does that mean? You hear some normal phrases like curiosity like a child. Like when you're an adult, you're not creative anymore. Children were creative. You're not creative anymore. You have to get that child spirit. But that doesn't really make sense. Everyone is always curious. Gossip is a form of adults' curiosity of other people in social human interactions. For adults, it really just depends on like what the topic is. Kids are curious about most things because they literally don't know that much. Everything is new to them, thus there is just a lot of possibilities to like be curious about things. They imagine up a new fantastical idea like a dragon, and they don't know that there has been dragons before. They only know that they are making a thing. Adults' ability in the world for being really good at making things is actually that we know endpoints, that we know what happens. If you do 2 + 2, you know that's going to equal 4. And because of this, that can also restrict you, because you have this idea of like, well, I'm not going to pass this barrier anymore because I've already been here, so I'm going to go to somewhere else. But if you look past the barrier, you can go further than it. And that's what curiosity is. Trying something, even if you know that it's not going to work, you may find out something new. A lot of inventions have just been people going like, okay, but what if we did this really dumb thing with it? And then it's like, oh, well, you created this entire new thing. Or like, oh, I'm going to create the strongest glue. And then you make the weakest glue and get Post-it notes. It's just things like that. Also, yeah, Comic Sans, an idea. It was an attempt at something. Another idea that's really common that people use is the like, you just gotta feel it. And like, it's a bad thing to say that. Artists are like notorious for this. When I started out doing artwork, that was like a common phrase. To figure out the colors, you just gotta feel them. You gotta feel the colors. You go to a tutorial on YouTube and it's like, you gotta feel the lines. You gotta feel the motion. And like, that's bad. That's dumb. I don't like that. I think anyone that says that, you run away from. Someone who says that is just saying that they don't know how to explain an idea. It's like if you're in a math class and you know how to do math, but when the teacher comes up to you and goes like, you got an F. You're not getting an F because you don't know the math. You probably shouldn't get an F, but like, you're getting an F because you couldn't explain the math, even though you got the right answer, because the whole point is about communication. Art, in and of itself, is a form of communication. It's just a visual medium, but you can explain what you're doing in other ways. If you can't explain that, then it generally just means that you don't know how to translate that information elsewhere. So it's a huge thing that people say that like they shouldn't. It's not helpful. It's not great. If you know something, you should try to be somewhat like a teacher and be able to explain it, because then it can also help you in your mind understand like, this is how something is made, this is why it's made, and all that jazz. Then there's, you know, the whole thing of like, some people are just gifted. There are only some people who can do things, and like, you can't, because they're special. It's very silly. Life is more like an RPG, where everyone starts off with random stats. No matter what, you get random stats. The whole point of like, when people have success stories of like, oh, this person who was in a wheelchair did an entire race. It's like, that's cool. They did that not because they couldn't, but because their stats were made in a way that was harder for them to do a thing that we would typically think of as normal. They put more time in, more resources to do the same thing. So if you're a person who can't think of like ideas at points, it's not, you can never do this sort of thing, you have to give up, blah, blah, blah. It's just an idea, well, what things do you need to level up in order for you to get to that point? And sometimes that can be easy. Sometimes it's just like reading a book for 2 seconds, or somebody saying a phrase. At other points, it's harder. Sometimes it takes time. Sometimes it takes resources that you don't have. Sometimes the tech to actually do this stuff just isn't there. It's a whole process of figuring out what you can do and stuff, which is not bad. It's just being truthful about like, not needing people to be gifted, just needing people to have access to resources for them to get to the level they need to be. Then there's the big one that becomes a really big pain on like every social media site, and at points becomes really bad. This is like the DeviantArt sort of thing, where you get original C, do not steal. Wow, you use the colors red and orange together. I can't believe you used this color palette. I know there's only so many color palettes, and that this one is like a traditional color palette that like is used because it's near each other in the color wheel that we use today. But no, it's my original palette. You can't use it. How dare you bat. That's the whole original ideas stuff that comes about when you have things like, some people just have good ideas. Again, this is like the gifted one again, but a little bit different because it's talking more about like the implementation of ideas, how somebody has something can't be transferred somewhere else. Like if you have the resources that somebody else has or the knowledge somebody else has, you can make the same thing. It's not people have good ideas and some people don't. It's just like where you are in your life and what you've done to be able to do certain types of ideas. Saying that like only some people can have good ideas is terrible, because like everyone can make good ideas at any point. It just depends on the area that you're discussing. And if you want to transfer to another area of ideas in the world, then it just requires that work to get there. That's very logical to get to. You can do it. It's a thing. And then there's the other thing that comes from original ideas is there's a correct answer. The idea of having original ideas sometimes can imply that there is only one endpoint. If you have come up with the idea and it's your original idea, then you own the idea. Think of closed species. You have a protogen. Protogens are just circles with robot mascots. I'm sorry, they just kind of are. And they're cool, that's fine. But they're not that original. They're a remix of different ideas. So saying that like somebody owns them becomes weird because you're also getting this idea that, well, there's a correct way to make a protogen. There's a correct way to do this, a correct way to do that. Concepts don't work like that. They're very fluid of like what can be considered an idea, and like people will categorize them differently based on who they are. No idea can be correct. If you want to prop up a table because it has a wobbly leg, well, you can stand there and hold it so it's not wobbly. It's not efficient. You probably don't want to do that, but that is a way that you can answer that question. You can put a book underneath it. That's the size that doesn't wobble. You can make a new leg for the table. You can throw out the table and put in a new table and then not have to worry about the wobbliness. There's no correct way to do anything. There's only ways to do things that are ways that you want them to be completed, or ways that you want to try to make them completed. There's the final thing of the original ideas that a lot of people say, which is that somebody's already thought of it. And it's true. Everyone has probably already thought of what you thought of. We all live in the same world. If you've seen a cat, somebody has already thought about that. Probably way before you, because they probably were making the cats domestic, thus making more of the cats that we see today. You are not original with your cat, but that's cool. That means that everything in the world is remixed if everyone's thought of that already. It just depends on how you want to implement it, which is great. It means that you can be original just by being vocal. A lot of inventions are just people who pointed out something really obvious. One obvious one is that the Earth used to be one continent and then it became multiple because of the tectonic plates and stuff. And like people were like, no, it's not that. We've been like this the entire time, until you look at like a map and it's like, it's very obvious once you really think about it that like the Earth has gone whoosh. So it's good that somebody came up with that. That person had a bad time, but like the concept itself is good to have and to be vocal about it. You can be the next great inventor by just pointing out the obvious. Being vocal about your ideas is half of doing the thing, because it doesn't matter if everyone's thought of the idea if no one has said it out loud. So you should say it. You should just go. If somebody's already thought of it, somebody will let you know and go like, oh yeah, somebody's already made it over here, and you go, okay, that's cool. And then you can either take inspiration from that and build off of that, or you can make a new thing of your own. An original idea doesn't need to happen, because that's not the point of ideas. The point of ideas is for you to be you. Who the fuck cares if it's original? Fucking get out of here. Go away. You don't need that. One of these examples of originality that I like is things like Dither's Nut, the Biggin Nut. It's a scream into the void of nut that will appear on the screen if you redeem their channel points, which is very cool, because that means that you can get an assumption of like what the nut is. The nut may just be the nut itself. The nut may be something more. We don't know. I actually haven't asked them. So like, but you know, there's a bunch of different type of nuts. People really like nuts. And when you're talking about nuts, you can't just leave it at dither. You have to talk about Tiny's nut. Tiny's nut is another implementation of this idea, which is really cool, because you have an idea that's, you know, original or whatever, which in and of itself probably isn't, because there's a lot of people with nuts and it has its own assumptions and stuff, but that different type of nut was put into a new way. It was put into a new art style, it was put into a new context. If they yell nut into the void, they have a different type of nut. And that's really cool, because like everyone has their own take on nuts. The relationship between nuts can be very direct or can be very vague. Tiny's and Dither's nuts is more direct. There are people who are probably a little bit different degrees of the nut, but like everyone likes nuts, including Giuseppe's, who is like, no one's gonna be angry that people like get a certain thing from his artwork. Their artwork is super cool. It's super nice. It's very pretty. It also has a very similar theme in every one of them, because everyone talks about that very specific theme. And that's okay. No one is gonna hate that. In fact, most people like it for that reason. And that's cool. We should, like, it'd be nuts to say otherwise, that anyone would not want dragons. Like, That's what they like. That's the common theme through them. Painted dragons. I would show you other examples of the common themes, but I only have this one picture and nothing else. There's only this picture. Now we go on to ideas being just ideas. A lot of people like to reduce it down to just, it's an idea, which in and of itself is very weird to say when you think about it for 2 seconds. You know, this is the same topic we were discussing earlier about like good and bad and stuff, about like how you can mix and remix stuff. Inherently, all ideas are on some type of categorization of like where they are, how they relate to what you're doing. So it's very important to think about them. Thus, if you're just saying like, oh, it's just an idea, it becomes very bad. It becomes the normal like, oh, it's just a picture, don't worry about it. Oh, ooh, politics, that's boring, that's bad, don't do that, I only want fun. It's very dumb to say that. A lot of like political movies are ones everyone likes. Some of the best movies, Kiki's High Flying Adventure. It's a great movie. It is also very political if you look at it. Like, its themes are in direct relation to like politics. It's not that hard to read into. That's stated in the text at points. Text being like what the media is. This has politics to it, and it's a very good movie. It's fun. It's happy. It's sad. Everyone should watch it. It's one of my favorite Miyazaki movies, but all of his other ones have the same thing. And people love them. If you just say it's just a movie, you're actually reducing what cool things are about it, what ideas it brings forth, and that you can think about for like all of time. Same thing with things like Nier. Nier is a game that basically is a critique on like everything in video games and the way that we do stories and stuff, which is really cool because like you get this game, it's super fun to play, it's bombastic, it has great music, it's like this whole adventure. You cry like a little fucking baby at certain points. I get emotional in the sense of like I'll get a little teary-eyed at points at like movies nowadays. Video games are very interaction based with me. Because they're such interactions, I don't normally cry at them. This one I just fucking sobbed at for like a long time. It got to me really hard, and it gets to a lot of people really hard. It used ideas from other places and used them in a way that actually affects people, because even though it's just an idea, it's an idea that like creates more ideas and is introspective of the ideas that are already there. And that becomes really cool. You can put this sort of things into furry artwork as well. My 2 pieces I have, one of them is about 2 guys hugging, which is very cute. I think it's very cute, but also it is the gays' propaganda to normalize people stop being little shits. There are a lot of people that still don't like when gay people hug, which is a thing that like it depletes over time when you show other people like it's just a normal thing and they're like, oh, that's cute. I don't have anything else to say about it, so it's whatever. And that sort of thing can help out with a lot of people just by showing that that's a good idea or that's a cool thing to have. Another piece I have is one that like I view as bad. Not like its construction is fine. The themes of it is bad. It's based off of Dragon Quest 3, because that's the one I played the most. There's a class, clerics. You basically have this motif of Christian iconography in a game where this sort of symbol is a place of like, oh, it's healing, it's kind, but you also have a cleric that has the same symbol that's going out and beating monsters. It kind of shows you like, oh, well, that's kind of similar to religion, where like it has some good elements to it, but also it kind of is a bloody mess at points. That's the sort of thing that it's like, oh, it's just an idea of a picture, but like it means something when you actually think more into it. That creation of that idea comes from not just thinking of it as just an idea, but actually think of like why it's an idea in the first place. So there's a better thought process to have for all of this, so that we actually get to the point of like being able to create new ideas, aka remixing our experiences and knowledge. And those things come from these sorts of things, about the stories that we have in our minds, from complex problem solving to ideas that aren't even there, to like limitations and the basic needs of even creating the ideas beyond yourself. So we have things of creating a story. If you put out a picture, people will make a story about it if they really want to. A lot of people like when you add your own stories to it and go like, well, this is the story that I thought of, because people like reading into things. People like when there's something to an image or to anything, because it helps you explain things in your life. Again, like the Hayao Miyazaki movies or like the Nier game, it's those stories that are told are fake, but because they are real in the sense of their themes, they can connect to people. And that makes it to where stories are one of the biggest things that we need, and especially for ourselves. Our memories and history are about people creating a story of themselves in their mind. About like, well, I used to be a little baby Koor, and I used to have ice cream at Dairy Queen, go to Burger King in the morning with my grandma and get 2 egg and cheese croissants. And I'd be very happy, and I remember those memories, and those build up me to where I nowadays sometimes get ice cream and also go to Burger King to get 3 egg and cheese because I'm a big boy now. I need more eggies. That's a story in my head. If I forgot about that, I may not get the egg and cheesies anymore because it wouldn't be me. It wouldn't be the story I tell. And you have those stories too, where you can go like, oh, I do this thing because this happened. And that process of a story makes up you. It allows your collection of ideas in your head actually form a line to where you can understand them. And then there's complex problem solving. Language is a good complex problem solving skill that requires you to actually think about how to connect ideas together. If you don't know what any of this means, you can't connect these ideas together because you don't have the tools to actually solve them. Ideas come about when you actually have the knowledge and experience to deal with it. The stuff over there that you are reading or that if you can read it, you can, but you know, it's kanji and hiragana from the Japanese written language. And it means I like trains. It doesn't mean that directly because some of that can't be translated directly because it's not the same as our language. But the same point gets across, and if you understand how languages translate between each other, you can start to understand these languages more without needing to actually understand them, such as this picture. It starts off with a seedling, then it grows into a big tree. We kind of know how trees work, so that's a way that you can think of those problems. If you don't know how this problem actually works, you can't solve it. Ideas are just about understanding how to solve a problem. If you don't know a certain section of something, well, like, you may not know Japanese, but you know that Google can translate things, so maybe you can use Google. You know that you're going to lose information, but like, can you figure out what information you lose? Is there something you can add to it that goes beyond it? Like, maybe you like trains and cats, so it's like, watashi wa densha ga togakko ga suki desu ne. You can do that and add more to it, rather than just have it just be the static thing of only being a problem and only just solving it and shoot, no more. You can actually do more. And that makes like ideas actually come about, because again, a lot of ideas come from conflict and disturbances. Solutions are ways of getting over those conflicts and disturbances. You then have ideas that aren't there. When we're talking about anything, there's things that we're implying aren't being talked about. If I'm talking about art right now, I'm not really implying about music. Even though music is a creative idea, I don't know much about music, so I can't really explain that. So in my analysis, I may not think about certain aspects of like music that could actually apply to making better ideas here, because I just don't know that. And when you do those sorts of things, you can actually get new ideas from figuring out the things that aren't there. A funny version of this is foreign music. Kind of like how it's hard to read Japanese if you don't know Japanese. There's a lot of songs that still you can listen to. You can still hear the sounds. And because our bias is towards English, if you're from the US or the UK and stuff, or like an English-speaking space, you'll hear the same sounds because the voice can only make so many sounds. So you'll hear like random sounding music that sounds really weird and doesn't make sense because that's not how the language built it. But we still try to figure out the stuff that's there, which means that you can actually make a whole genre of music that's literally just taking foreign music and then placing your own lyrics on it to it and getting people to listen to the lyrics that you wrote to create an entire new song. You can make a song just because you don't know a language. By learning a language, you can actually lose the ability to hear that song, which is really cool. Like, it's bad that you lose some abilities, but like, there's trade-offs to like not knowing things and trying to figure out what those things are. You also have darker versions of this, and like capitalism being the end of history. If you think of capitalism as being the last system that we all use, well then everything is basically a money problem at that point, or a private property problem. If we don't have enough housing, well, the simple solution to not enough housing, or to housing the homeless people, is making houses. That's very easy to do. You just need people to make houses and to be like, okay, we're gonna use this land for houses. But if you're in a capitalist system and it's the end of history, so you can't think of any other solutions, you can't think of anything else, you have to go with the idea of like, somebody needs to buy a plot of land, then somebody needs to build the lumber or like get the actual resource for it, and then it needs to be profitable, or the state needs to fund it so that it's like not profitable anymore, but maybe it's profitable in the future, and blah 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 blah. And like it doesn't actually focus on people's needs anymore. It just focuses on exchange of money, and that's not helpful when you're needing to solve like bigger problems like climate change. Where like if countries think of themselves as not being a world and only being separate from themselves, you can have one country have control over like the Amazon forest and want to cut it all down, and we can go like, no, you can't cut that down, but then another country's like, okay, but I'll pay you a lot of money, and like if you don't take this money, you're gonna be in a bad situation anyway. So then we just keep cutting down more trees and stuff. Like it's a whole interconnected problem that can't be solved if we only think of the things that we're thinking of right now, because they're problems because we're not thinking of other things at points too. Knowing about what's there and what isn't there is a very good way to come up with an idea and to understand ideas in the future. There's also limitations. This is similar to the not knowing something's there, or like thinking of the things that aren't there. And this is being limited to only so many things there. Basing is a very good example of this. They have this cool little person, Loaf. We don't ask questions about Loaf. I did one time, and I regretted it. I saw some things. You don't want to see things, chat. You don't want to go down that road. But yeah, so their Loaf is a limitation because you only have this one character that sits in the corner. What can you do with them? You want to make them more lively and poppy. Well, Basing's answer was costumes. So then you have little Loaf that, like, with this limitation of only being on Loaf, you can get a lot of really cool costumes, and you have an unlimited amount of costumes while still being limited to what's on Loaf. You can make Loaf into a blue square, but that gets rid of Loaf, so you have to figure out around Loaf and figure out like how you're actually making Loaf into cute anime or into Mega Man. Unlimited Loaf. From limitations, you can have unlimitedness from limitations and allow you to focus your ideas, which is very useful. Other examples of this are actually like old video game music from like Mega Man. You only had so many sound channels to actually use, which means to hear a song you would need to be very particular about it, which means that a lot of old tunes were very hummable. Nier is one of the future sort of hummable music where if you listen to Nier music, like you can hear the music. You can hum it if you want to. There is nothing stopping you. But if you go to like a Marvel movie and listen to its music, you can't hum that shit. That's just like, wow, this music is supposed to make me feel triumphant. This music is supposed to make me feel sad. And it's just like, okay, but like if you step out of the movie theater, you're not going like, like you're just going like, it made me sad. There was some violins in there. That's cool. There was a drum. I think it had like a low rumble to it, but like I don't know the tune. That limitation to making the music very hummable is something that like a lot of people miss, because like it is nice to listen to music in your head, and if you're not good at like listening to like a track perfectly back, then humming is a way to like recall those memories a little bit better. And without that, it makes things bad. That's why back in the day, people had jingles and stuff. Language is a thing that also kind of has a rhythmic tune to it. A lot of people use that as music, and it was a limitation, but it was a limitation that everyone used. Like ring around the rosy, pocket full of posies, ashes, ashes, we all fall down. It has a message. It has an entire thing. It's pretty dark, but like it's a tune that you can say and a tune that you can hum, because the limitation of the human voice requires it unless you have training to go past that limitation. It's very important to think of limitations and to think of what's not there. Very, very good. Also, Nier does have very good music. I love Nier. Everyone should listen to Nier after this presentation. After. Next thing is limitations of monetary stuff. Whoa! I sold a pack. It's on Gumroad. It's at this link if you would like to help support my work and also get artwork in return. Maybe be my subby. Maybe give me a little cheer. You can also be my Prime subby to make me a Prime-ing. In all seriousness, help support is good. It is one of the basic needs that one needs. If you don't have these basic needs, like you can't get like food, water, shelter, etc. If one cannot feed themselves, they die. You can't make ideas while you're dead. That's why you're dead. also the need for like education, inspiration. Inspiration is more of just like having experiences. A lot of my ideas for drawings, even if I don't make them, come from things I did in childhood. I like paintings because I used to go to a lot of museums, or a lot of Renaissance era stuff is painting. So that was like a really big inspiration for me. Going to things like the Mammoth Cave is very cool because then you can see structures that are both organic and non-organic, and like you can see all these things, which like if you don't have those experiences, you can't recall them. It's a very basic need for ideas. So education is very important because education is one of those ways to experience more things that you're not going to experience, like measuring the earth. Most people aren't going to measure the earth, but it's still something you need to understand in order for you to understand how to draw an earth or how the earth works. It's important. You also need direction and autonomy. Direction and autonomy is how you do things in the world. Direction is basically a goal that you have, because that way you can actually like go towards something. It's like driving in a car and you're going 75 miles down a road towards nowhere. No matter how fast you drive, you're not going to get to a destination if you don't know where you're going and you need directions. Slowing down can be really useful, which is a lesson people need to learn. Because I've been with people who have driven and it's like, we don't know where we're going. And then they're like, okay, I'll drive 80. And it's like, no, just drive like 10 miles below the speed limit because we don't know where we're going. And they just keep going. And like, it's not helpful. You need direction. You need goals. Otherwise, just whoosh into the ether. Autonomy is one of those ways to also have the direction as well. If you don't have the freedom to do something, then it's not even a goal that you can have. Those choices are required for humans and for furries and yins like me to actually be able to operate, because you need the ability to like go a place. You need the ability to say like, I want 12 donuts today, and then 25 donuts tomorrow, and then 12 donuts today. Chat, I did not buy 4 boxes of donuts from Tim Hortons recently. So, like, you need the autonomy to do things. That's very important to do. That's how a lot of ideas are created in itself. Again, the obstruction and difficulties is what creates solutions, because if Tim Hortons isn't giving you 6 boxes of donuts because they're saying it's just too many donuts, and you don't need that for one person, and you're like, no, I want 6 boxes of donuts. Give me 6 boxes of donuts, Tim Hortons. You figure out a solution. Just saying like, well, I'll take the available donuts. There you go, it's fine. And then they're like, okay, it's a thing. It's fine. It can always work out. Don't worry about it. Live your life is basically my point. And buy me some donuts. New topic. Part belly? Numbers are hard, guys. Where do ideas come from? Whoa. Thing. Where do they come from? We've been talking about ideas and the elements and the fundamentals and stuff, but I would like to go over like where the ideas themselves come from. Broad topics are cool, but also the little elements are important as well. Knowing the little elements tells you the direct process so that you can figure out things for yourself rather than trying to assume things. First thing is experiences. Experiences are like one of the direct things about ideas. Again, it's yourself, you're remixing your experiences, because experiences are the ideas themselves. If you take in egg, then you're trying to replicate egg. Drawing art a lot of times is like trying to put an experience of something into another form. That's the translation between things. You can actually kind of talk about it like a language, in that you are literally translating between 2 mediums. And if you understand part of the experiences, you can transfer it to other experiences. Like with this egg, I was trying to make sure that the lighting was really nice. I had a different egg picture. You can imagine egg. And the idea of trying to make the egg look real or like good is contrasted with other things that are a little bit more complicated but have the same sort of like process to get there. The idea of trying to light and shadow things can become very easy when you think about a more simple experience and then transfer it to a higher, more complicated experience. Those experiences are also about connection. You know what an egg is because this could just be an oval. It doesn't need to be an egg, but because your experience with egg is real and valid, you can understand that what I've created is egg, while up there what I've created is some type of canine. We've experienced canines, thus that's something that translates into more of the idea. Same thing for emotional ideas as well. This is bentozine. I am using bentozine. Hello. And that connection for VR chat allows me to, right now, like move my arms, which is something that I can do because I'm very expressive with my arms. Probably have seen me like wiggle waggle all over the place. That experience allows me to be more expressive with what I'm doing, and also to think about things like when I'm sitting as a bobblehead and I can't move my arms. This is one of the solutions, is because I was annoyed that I couldn't move my arms. But you can also have other things too. Topics like maws versus paws, which is a connection that people have because their experience with maws or paws is something that is meaningful to them, and thus is something that they express. And then they make memes like the vor meme or the squish me with your beans meme. And then you get people who know these connections and then make a model around such connections, and then everyone likes them and stuff. It's the whole thing. Experiences are very important and are one of the fundamental parts of it. So is knowledge. Knowledge is the other part, because experiences are cool, but if you don't translate those into memory that allows you to actually experience new things and like be able to retain those new things, then you can't use that elsewhere. You can't know what a maw and a paw is if you don't remember what a maw and a paw is, or if you think that I'm saying like a mom and a dad instead of furries and ruining mom. A lot different from your knowledge of something, which is a common problem with artists that get burnt out. It's that too, like some people, they make all, are you a furry? You're talking about maws and paws, and they're like, no, my maw and paw. And they're like, oh, you separated your fursuit head and your paw. That's even better. Like that whole thing. Knowledge is very important for art and ideas. It can be kind of weird. Your experience of something can be a lot different from your knowledge of something. I've had this problem too, where it's like my skills are objectively okay. They're good to what I need them to do, but my experience of them is very low. And thus people can go like, oh, your art is nice, but then you're like, but no, I am experiencing that it's shit. You have to understand where those like knowledge and experiences lie for when you're creating ideas. If you're more knowledgeable about things, you're more likely to hit this whole looped of a thing. It's why a lot of kids will write about like some spaceship going out and doing some weird thing, while somebody with more knowledge may go like, oh, well, you need a propulsion system, you need this thing, you need to think about gravity, blah, 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 blah. You have like a kid who's just made a picture and it's like, neat, it's nice, but it's not that well in depth. And then an adult who's like, my thing is shit, I can't show this to anyone, it's terrible. And it's like literally like a schematic of how we're gonna do future travel. It's hard to like compare those two, but you have to remember knowledge and experiences are very closely linked, but they are still very different. So you have to be very careful about that. But once you get the knowledge to do stuff and you like have the experiences you want to show, you can get really like in depth with it. There's like an artist called I keep calling them TF Fiddler because they have TF, so it's transformation, but it's not TF. T Fiddler is an artist who draws a lot of cute boys. They made like a lot of great artwork, and a lot of this artwork is like very technical when you look at it. There's a lot of uses of certain color palettes. These ones are like red and green, although they don't look red and green, but they're complementary, which means that like it's a color theory thing. They have anatomy, composition, like they have a lot of use of knowledge. They have a very big array of knowledge that they can use for all their things, which means that they can then express that in different ways. If they didn't have this knowledge, they wouldn't be able to express quite as much as this, and like that'd be sad. I like this picture a lot, and also these pictures, also the Tanuki. The Tanuki is very cute. You should go follow him. And also everything else that I've talked about. I will have that information at the end. Do not fear. Play is another one that is very important. An idea is you because it's your knowledge and experiences, but a lot of times if you're not acting out an idea, it's still in your head and it's still playing. So one of the big things about humans is that we can project an idea into the future and then go off of that. We don't inherently need something to be present to do something. So we can kind of experiment in our head. One of the great ways of seeing that sort of experimentation in the present day from people doing things in their head is things like video games. This level screen is one of like the basic designs of showing how people play. This is Super Mario Bros. For the NES. This is like a masterclass of design. You have this Goomba that's going towards Mario, to Goomba going that way, and Mario is coming this way. And you have a block right there. In the screenshot I got, Mario's past it, but a lot of times what people do is that they're like, I know I can jump, so I'm going to jump. And what they do is they hit that first block, immediately slam down, and then hit the Goomba. So it teaches you, one, that Goomba bad, and that you will get hurt if you don't know that you're going to get hurt. But also, it tells you that there's an obstacle that you're going to hit and that you have to be very careful because they're everywhere. There's another one right here. It could happen again. When you hit that block, you also got stuff from it, which means that you should probably hit these blocks too. Just you need to be careful about how you hit them. And that sort of play, that idea of experimentation with an idea, is very important because when people start to like die, of course, when this happens, but like when a person first runs into a Goomba and learns that enemies hurt and there are enemies in the game at all, it's like, okay, that's a learning experience. Then how do you get over that? Well, you literally jump. Well, if you jump, you hit a block. Well, now you know that there's items that you can get, but also that there's danger from jumping and that you have to be very careful about where you jump in the platformer. And there's all this stuff that culminates to like people being able to be masters at this game. If a good game is a game that inherently hinges yourself on play, some type of play at any point. It's very important that you have these sorts of play mechanics because humans require those sorts of play moments in order for them to develop ideas. They need to experiment, you need to experiment, everyone needs to experiment, that's how you grow. Same thing with art. I like werewolves, so I was playing with ideas of werewolves and the moon. So you have pictures that are very different from each other, and it's just an idea of like composition. Like the moon being directly behind the werewolf's head is neat, but you can also have it above the head and make it like more dramatic. That's how lighting works. You could also change the lighting and make it so that the moonlight is the thing that you see and like you can barely see the wolf even more. Colors are a thing that you can play with because like the sky isn't inherently blue. It could also be purple, it can be red, it can be a lot of things. Even at nighttime, your perception of color is something that's very important. And for things like transformation, when you're talking about that, how you do the transformation is important. The first two are already completed, so you could just say that they're wolves. This one is still in the process, so it's like playing with, well, how does that transformation work? Even with a composition like that, yada yada yada, you have all those elements together that create new pictures. And most pictures are just like, what if you did this? What if you did this? And you're just playing with the idea in your head. Eventually you get a fluffy boy. It's like still werewolf and stuff, but like the composition may be different and stuff, but it's applied to something that like for this it was a gift. So I've applied my skills of learning those sorts of things into a picture for like a friend. Or Zaz, the best of friends. You need to do that to create ideas. You need to play around with ideas. That requires you to play with ideas that you like, and sometimes ideas that you don't like. It depends on what you're trying to do, and you have to be careful about some ideas. Racism is an idea that like you can play around with, and a lot of people get caught up in racist arguments that sound good to them because thinking about it is like, oh yeah, it makes sense that like black schools are defunded because of culture. So we should have vouchers to help out so that people, the good people, can move to the right schools. But if you know how schools operate, you can't overflood one school because it's good, because what you're basically doing is abandoning another school. You get people who think like, oh, voucher choice is a good idea because like I want people to do this thing. I've thought of this idea in my head and like, yeah, it's good if people can like go and take their money elsewhere. It's worked with capitalism by rich people or people with money being able to purchase things that they want. They get to finally purchase the thing they want. But the actual application of it can be bad and is a failure point because, again, if you overburden a school that can't be overburdened, then racist people just start blaming people and go like, oh, it's because they were black and they came to the school and that ruined it. That's what happens every time if you don't think about what you're doing and what ideas you're using. So you should always be careful about any idea you use. Really relay, like if somebody else brings up a point, like kind of entertain it. It doesn't have to be true. Like you don't have to like believe in it, but you should at least entertain it and think like, oh, how would this run through my head? And then be careful about like the consequences after, which takes time. It takes effort to do that. For topics like how should you draw paw? Play with how paw works, and that's fine. There's nothing that's going to be bad. You may get one person who's like, wow, that's not an anatomically correct paw. But if you start talking about like how should schools be structured, you're going to have to be a little bit more careful because if you fuck up a child's education and you can fuck up more things. So like play will be a part of everything, but the sorts of play and the stakes are also something that you have to be considerate of. Then you have space and boredom. The idea element of this is that you need a space in order to think of something. The school thing, like I was talking about before, we live in a space that has a broken school system. So we actually have a path to take down to try and fix it. because again, a solution requires that there is a disturbance in the first place. If you're trying to think of an idea, you kind of need a space to where ideas are going to form. If I'm trying to draw and I'm like, oh, what do I need to draw? Or what should I draw today? I want to draw an old memory. So like I draw this old memory of me sleeping in a car, because when I was a little kid, I would take a lot of field trips with my parents to different places, or we would travel very far away to a lot of different locations. And because of that, I would sleep in a car. LED lights weren't a thing. When it became nighttime, you'd get like this red hue. Once it became very dark, you'd get the amber hue of the nighttime. So like the redness of things was something that I remember a lot. So it was something that was very important to me, and thus I drew that. And that was a space that I got to. This picture of my Randy having a $2 bill came because I had a literal $2 bill and I was bored and I was looking at Randy. I was just like, I don't know what to do. I don't have anything to do right now, and I can't do anything right now, but you know, I want to make a joke. The joke was from other people doing like oh, if you retweet this, you get a bunch of money. I was like, well, what if Randy had $2 and like he would split it with you, which you can't split a $2 bill because it's one singular bill, but like he'll split it with you. I thought that was funny, so then I posted that. I like this post a lot. I don't know if other people like it as much, but I like this a lot. And this just came from me being bored and then just kind of seeing other people's things and being like, well, what if I do that? Same thing with the BLFC pizza. BLFC pizza was a thing. That space allowed me to make this really stupid picture. Is it a good picture? No. Is it a good topic? Probably not. But I was bored and I was just like, okay, well, I'm going to make this because whatever. And it took me 2 seconds to make. Having that space really helps. It's why a lot of people, when you talk about inspiration and stuff, they'll go like, I'm walking through the park and then I came up with an idea. You put yourself into a place where you can make something. And a lot of times by slowing down, you'll create more ideas because you're like wading through all the things around you. And thus you see more things to do, rather than like if you're hyper focused on always productivity, you miss a lot of things because you're only focusing on one goal. Like you need that slow space. You need that time to actually do all the cool things that you want to do. And then there's luck. Luck is a thing that is inherent to like all of life, but ideas are more so that as well. If you're thinking like of what to create, a lot of times it really depends on just where you are at that time. As a kid, I didn't think of clothes fashions. So like a lot of my clothes are very like solid colored, very casual, stuff like that. If I had been in a place I was more lucky to have more vibrant clothing, I may have picked more vibrant clothing, but I just wasn't. That's the luck of the draw. When I was starting to draw furries and stuff, I didn't have the skills to make a persona that I liked, and I also didn't have the knowledge base to do that. Thus, my luck of the draw came with my original persona, which I wasn't very happy with until I made my new one. And I was able to go down different paths and make a bunch of different personas that are the same thing, but just different species, because that's something that interests me and made me happy. It's fun to do that. And if I hadn't also learned about like what transformation was from the internet, if I didn't learn about what furries were, I wouldn't have done any of these things. And so all ideas that you make also always have an inherent chance of like anything. Around that luck, you can kind of break it. So like if you do know of something, like the algorithm is a block-based system that also kind of deals with ideas, because you're always trying to go like, oh, well, I want my stuff to go out into the universe. I want people to see it. Well, these are actually 2 real posts. I posted one onto Reddit, and although on Twitter everyone liked it because I had the visibility and stuff, because I've been working for people to see my Twitter, a lot of people don't know me on Reddit, that my stuff isn't as visible, or people just will scroll by it because it's not an interest, because it's not the right forums, because I don't know which right forums to post to and stuff. There's like a whole system of luck, even within like real systems, for your ideas to flourish. You can have a good idea, but if you're not in the right place, your idea may just go nowhere, even if it is a good idea and people really like it. And this is a problem with just information. Too much information, not everyone can get heard. It's hard. If you're more local, you're more likely to be heard. If it's national, it's harder to be heard. When you're thinking of ideas, you have to think about like where you're taking it, what the goal is, why is the goal there, and you have to kind of be surprised by the results, or not surprised. You have to understand that there will always be a surprise to the results, no matter what. A lot of times, like people who get big because like it's just one person saw it and happened to retweet it, and then a bunch of people happened to retweet it who were going to retweet it. Blah blah blah. You get a lucky strain of people retweeting you enough to actually have it be meaningful. Luck is definitely a part of ideas in its creation and in its implementation, and you have to watch out for that and really think about it. When you're creating stuff, it's not something you really have to directly think about, because like you should be creating things because you want to or because there's a necessity for it. But if you're going to put that out into the world, you also do have to realize luck is definitely there and will definitely influence like which ideas even get picked up in the first place, or which ideas you're even allowed access to for the knowledge and education that you have. And then there's being vocal. This one is like, once you have the idea, once you've created it, you should say it. One, because you get a response, and responses are really good. You want people to give you feedback. If you throw out an idea and nothing happens with it, you can think it's the greatest idea in the world, but like you won't hear any flaws about it, you won't hear any positives about it. You need a response. That response has to be there. With such a response comes being vocal. And being vocal means putting your ideas out there, even if it's scary or hard to do. One of my favorite furry YouTubers is Ringer. Their name is like MMM Matches, but they're also called Ringer, so I'm calling them Ringer. They make a lot of videos of things like that I'm doing right now, but a lot shorter, where they're talking about, are you too old for the fandom? How do cons work in a COVID era? How would Zootopia actually work? Things like that, where like it's just kind of talking about that stuff and putting out the idea to be responded to, but also being able to like, when you put your stuff out there, you're also knowing how to say your ideas in the first place. So if you know how to say an idea, it's a lot easier to create something. It's similar to like an artist being able to draw a head. If you're not worried about the technical aspects of drawing the head, you can just go straight to creativity of like, what hair should I add? What facial structure do I add? How much fur? Blah, 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 blah. Being vocal is very important for ideas. Having critique is very important for ideas. Being collaborative with your ideas is very important. If you have an idea, just say it. Sometimes people will like have already thought of it and it's like, okay, whatever. But there are points too, which like if you just say the idea and like it's a thing everyone thinks about but hasn't said anything, you can be the first one to have like thought of the idea because you're the first one to actually have pointed it out, which helps with a lot of things. It helps with a lot of problems like racism, homophobia. All those things are very easy things to see as like people being vocal and then people learning about it. Gay used to be a word meaning bad in school. It still kind of is at points, it seems like, but like a lot more people are less likely to say that because it's like, oh, well, I've learned that like my uncle is gay, or that my brother is gay, or that I have a gay friend. If you think that gay people aren't bad, then trying to act like the definition of gay could mean bad doesn't make sense. People being vocal and being harmed because they were trying to be vocal helped people in the future have a nicer time. We all will live in this state where at some point one of our ideas isn't going to be popular, and as long as you're trying to always make sure that you're not harming people and that you're trying to do good for others and you're trying to listen and understand to make sure that your idea is fine, being vocal is really, really important because it means that a lot of things get fixed, or a lot of things get recognized to be fixed a lot faster. Everyone really needs to do that. It's very important, very good. There we go. Where to build your ideas up, or where to build up your ideas. English, it can be rearranged. Yeah, so this is the more technical side of stuff. This is a place where you actually put all these ideas into action from the presentation, because there'll be other presentations about this more granular stuff, but if you know the broad strokes of it, you can definitely just do the strokes, just broadly, or linearly, or granularly. There are many ways to stroke a folk. So, technical skills and testable skills. That is the way to test these ideas. If you have an idea and you do it, then you can figure out if it works or not. It's like the Mario game. It's like being vocal. You want to put stuff out there. So what are these sorts of things? One of the fun ones that schools do nowadays, which I find really cool because it teaches critical thinking, is the degrees of Wikipedia. It has different names, but it's basically the idea that you take one article from Wikipedia and you go to another article to Wikipedia. So like if you connect monkeys with the specific rope knot of a ship, you try to see how few connections there are to different ideas. And then you can, one, learn new ideas, but also to understand the relationship between ideas. Because if you can understand the relationship between ideas, then you can create new ideas by creating new relationships. If you're talking about a monkey in a knot, you go like, okay, well, the monkey has to tie the ship. What type of ship is it? Is it a spaceship? Oh, well, you can make a spaceship that the monkey goes on. And then the monkey goes out into the universe selling their different like rope wares, because this monkey likes to, or wants to learn about all the specific knots in the world, so that, or in the universe, so that they can become like the greatest ship mass maker, that sort of thing. That starts to build off ideas that you just keep going with because the relationship between all the ideas allows you to create new ones. That's basically what ideas are. And again, it's like the story of you. You are literally just a connection of this, but you're just framing it in a way that you can understand it. And that's very important. Then you actually have like actual technical skills, such as Skuru, who is a speedrunner, or is a speedrunner for Twilight Princess, but they play other Zelda games. And because they had the knowledge and experiences of some of the Zelda games, they got to be able to transfer that with their speedrunning skills to actually like make really cool shots, like this one where they hit the skull. I forget the name of it. I'm not a big OOT person. The little spider from afar when it wasn't in render distance, because he understands how the rendering works. He understands how the hitboxes work. So like he can do cool tricks like that. Or he can break the game because he understands that, like how the game works, how coding works. Video games are like a great way to test ideas because they are very much feedback machines. How you see the character pull the bow so that you know that it's shooting, the flashing to know that something's been hit, the ground itself being a thing that you can see, it's like gravity is being forced upon them and that they can move around. Like it is, the games are just idea feedback machines. With that limitation, you can actually do a lot of things with video games, and that's how speedrunners break most of their games, is by learning those ideas and being very creative of like, how are they going to get past this part? Is there an objective way to do this part, or do this technique and get off these few seconds of time, but I may fail, which may add more time, so like how am I going to do that? And it becomes this whole specific field of like figuring out the path that you should go down. It's a very good one, and it gets you cool shots like this. Then understanding failure is also another way to understand feedback. This is a sketch I have in my little art thing. I was drawing a skull from memory, and this looks really bad. It's not good. It's not great. It's pretty bad. A real skull is supposed to be this. This is not a skull. This is a skull. This is bad. This is a MRI scan, so it's pretty good because it's an actual skull. Knowing this failure is like, okay, well, where did I fail? Well, one, the eye socket isn't that deep. The nose is kind of okay, but the cheekbones are just fucking out of there. The jaw should connect more upwards and like attach, but it doesn't look like it should attach anywhere. It just kind of looks like it's there. I need to learn that myself so that I can create other things like this, which like these are 3 different skull shapes. The dragon needs to connect differently because of how reptiles work. Dog needs to work differently. Although there's the skull, there's also the skin that you have to think about more as well because it's a little saggier. Then like you have a bull, which like is a lot of different anatomy, but also I made them anthro, which means I have to think about how I'm connecting the two together. That's a test that you can just physically see once you're done of like, oh, did you do it correctly? Is it recognizable? What can you find is the error? What can you find is not the error? Because there's definitely still errors in all of these things, but those errors are like feedback that people also like. Like if you don't know anything about the skulls or you think the dragon is fine, then like it works. It technically finished the goal. But if you want to improve stuff, half of art is just trying to improve, trying to learn where you went wrong so that you can do it better next time, or find where you did right and then just continue that. And that's a very good way for feedback and to test your ideas and skills. And then I'm saying this again as making it its own thing. It's just the test your ideas. It's the vocal thing. It's the being aware of like what your ideas do from the start. You want to test your ideas and be fine with failure. Failure is good. Failing means that you get to try new things. Caribou is not failing. They're doing a very good model, but if they don't feel like their model is good, they will probably try to update it and stuff. They'll try to do better with it. And as they do more models, they'll be able to do better because you get more knowledge over time. Beta Ada Delota, one of the videos he started out with his like Hell series, I believe. From that, he grew over time and eventually his stuff looks a lot nicer. He's got a lot better production value. He has better fun topics, and he's even shifted into different content because he found stuff that he liked more, because he tested things that he wanted to do and tried to do more things. And that's important. That's how we grow as people. That's how you know that you're doing stuff, is by testing, just by going. If you never go, you can never get to a point where you get better because you're just not doing stuff. You can play with ideas in your head and they definitely can get better. Actually testing the thing is usually a lot faster of a result than just waiting around for the idea in your head to kind of just happen. And now you got it. That's literally all the broad strokes of the ideas here, rather than the granular strokes, which I'll do later if this format was nice. I think that it's nice that it went well, and I hope that you guys got a lot of information that you can use in your art or in any subject that you have. All the ways of like creating art is just how you create a computer program. It's how you find a favorite place to go fishing or go for a walk. It's a way to find better ways to get up in the morning. This isn't just for art, this is just for life, but it's very useful for art because this is one of the main factors of art, is thinking of these ideas. I hope you had a fun and enjoyable time with this presentation. You're now like the Bananasaur, who is the boss. You are now big bosses, big banana bosses. You should say hi to them too. And also watch out for the bat, it's very scary. Thank you for watching. Future Koor here with sources I used in this video, as well as all the cool background music, plus the folks' names you should check out. Or tell them to have a nice day because they're all good beans that deserve it. If you enjoyed my artwork sprinkled throughout this presentation and would love to see more of that work or wish to support my future works, hit the like and subscribe buttons, then head over to shop.purekoor.com. The 2020 sketch paint collection has 90 artworks plus a few retrospective writings for some extra insight. Watch my recent simultaneously released videos of I'm Back, a channel update, and How I Became a Furry. Remember to subscribe so that you can see future videos such as Will Artificial Intelligence Take Over Furry Commissions, How to Draw a Circle Koor's Way, and Furries, y'all should lower your commission prices, ? aka let's discuss the drama around buying and selling commissions. Comment below future video topics you'd like to see me discuss or ask me live if I'm streaming on Twitch. For just $1, you can get your name in upcoming videos and see the future videos early at patreon.com/purekoor. Again, thank you for watching. Keep your ideas pure. I'll see you next time, everyone.